Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the latest book review. I've just finished listening to a book by John Bolton called The Room Where It Happened. John Bolton, you may know, is a high up member of he was working with Donald Trump. He was the National Security Advisor to Donald Trump, which is generally considered to be one of the closest people to the president in terms of advisors. The National Security Advisor, NSA for short, is, you could say, one of the top security advisors, especially in terms of international security. He's in charge of the National Security Council, and along with the Secretary of State, he's one of the two most powerful men in terms of international affairs after the president. So John Bolton was picked by Donald Trump to be the National Security Advisor. He was in the job for, I think, about 1.5 years or so before he resigned. He wrote this book after resigning, obviously, called The Room Where It Happened. So yeah, obviously a very interesting book. We all obviously talk a lot about Donald Trump, but to have an account from someone who was literally inside the room where most of these major decisions happen, especially those relating to foreign policy, was obviously of quite a lot of interest. You do get the impression that he's being quite honest about what happened. Of course, we don't know for sure, but the impression you get from his style and the sort of content of the book, you feel that he's being quite candid and straightforward. John Bolton, in case you don't know, is considered one of the very sort of right-wing hardliner, what they call hawks in American foreign policy. He's considered one of the extreme of the extreme, and so when you actually got the position as National Security Advisor, many people around the world were probably quite concerned, that this is going to mark a sort of even more militant United States of America in the international stage. He's a sort of person who, just is very much believes in looking after American priorities, American interests around the world, and is, as I said, very, very much a hardliner. He was also a presenter on Fox News, which may have had something to do with Donald Trump hiring him. So yeah, it's an interesting book. It's pretty much a chronological account of his time as National Security Advisor to Donald Trump. Chronological, but he's then divides it into different you could say different areas or issues. So he'll deal with China, Trump's relationship with North Korea, Trump's relationship with Iran, and so he divides into different areas, and then within those areas it's a sort of a chronological, almost a day-to-day, week-to-week account of his meetings with Donald Trump and so on. So very interesting book. It was obviously, it did go through the censoring process of because obviously they had to make sure there was nothing either classified information or so on, and so it went through that process. But it contains a lot of interesting things, especially about the sort of character and the way that Donald Trump is going about his foreign policy. What sort of things stand out from the book? I would say it sort of confirms the sort of image you have of Donald Trump in your mind is in many ways confirmed from reading the book. He does seem to be the sort of person you think he is. Very much just making things up as he goes along. Very unconventional. One of the things you sort of realize from the book is that because sometimes you're not sure, as Muslims or generally people who are watching American government, there's this sort of that Donald Trump is a sort of outsider outside of the sort of political establishment. But then sometimes you think, is that really true? He's a billionaire, he's a businessman, he's amongst the elites. Is he really an outsider? But I think reading this book or listening to this book, you would come to the conclusion that he is in fact an outsider of the sort of political class or the political elites. So even the advisors around him see him, the way he's operating is very unorthodox and not really, you can see that even people like John Bolton are sort of professional politicians, professional civil servants, you could say. So they have a way of working, they have a way of protocols and procedures and a way of that they've been trained to work in government. And Donald Trump seems to be an outsider in that he's come in and he's sort of disrupting all of that. So that seems like it probably is true. You also, one of the things I guess I came out of it was that Trump, he seems to know a bit more than you would expect him to know. He's not the complete sort of completely uninformed type of idiot that you might get the impression. So yeah, he does know a bit about what's going on. He is able to ask questions. He is informed to some extent. But there's also a lot of funny things, of sometimes how silly he is as well. So, for example, he keeps thinking that he keeps confusing the Afghan president, the current Afghan president. He keeps confusing him with Karzai, the previous Afghan president. And it looks like Donald Trump, as you may expect, he's very obsessed about personal relationships. And he's very egotistical, obviously, that I think everyone knows that anyway. But, he keeps saying, everyone's dying to talk to him. He thinks everyone's dying to talk to him. This is why he wants to have that meeting with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. This is something very much coming from Trump himself. I need to talk to him. And at one point, he's saying the Iranians are dying to talk to me. The Iranians are actually refusing to talk to him when they try to arrange a meeting. But he really thinks that he just needs to meet people and then he can do the deal. He thinks he's really good at getting the deal done. And so it's quite funny at times. There's one point where they're dealing with the issue of Taliban in Afghanistan. And, Trump is saying, we've got to get our boys out of there. We've got to get the soldiers out of there. So he's always saying about everything, we need to get them out. And the people around him, like John Bolton, are trying to manage the situation. They're basically trying to explain to him, look, we can't just suddenly pull all the troops out of these countries and everything. But at one point, they're talking about Afghanistan and the Taliban. And Donald Trump says, I need to meet these guys, I need to talk to these guys. I was quite surprised, actually. He also says, we invaded their country, we took their country. And obviously John Bolton is flabbergasted and like, how could an American president even dream of talking to these guys? But someone's obviously put it into Donald Trump's head that, we invaded their country. You'd expect them to fight back, So that was interesting. But yeah, so overall, it is quite an interesting read, quite funny at times. About his interactions with different world leaders, and how he seems to just sort of have these sort of repetitive tirades or repetitive things that he goes into. Whenever he gets a chance, he's talking about how the Europeans are not paying for NATO, the Europeans are not pulling their weight. Whenever the topic of Germany comes up, he's always talking about how they're only paying 1% of their GDP towards NATO, they should be paying 2%, and things like that. So, very interesting read. Gives you a little bit of an insight of how things are operating within the White House at the moment with Donald Trump and the people around him. So thank you for listening. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum.